Good afternoon and welcome back to the I'm Booked podcast. I'm April O'Leary and it's afternoon right now, but if you're listening to this and it's the morning or the evening, it's just hoping that it's a happy day for you. And I am excited because I've got Diana Ward on today. She is one of our newest best-selling authors. Her book, and I'm holding it up here if you're looking on video on YouTube, Behind the Smile, The Heartbreaking Journey of Raising a Son with Addiction and Mental Illness. And if you're listening on any of the podcast platforms, of course, you can't see it, but it's a beautiful cover. And welcome to the show, Diana.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to talk to you because we have so many great things to talk about. Even though your book is a very difficult topic,
Mm.
it is a topic that needs to be talked about. It's a topic that I believe parents will feel a lot of hope and a lot of healing by reading your story. And I want to start there with you and your story, because some that are listening may not know you. You're a debut author, which is exciting because it's like having your first kid. You go from not being a parent at all to like all of a sudden now you're a parent. So now you're a parent of this book, Behind the Smile. Tell me a little bit about your story. Tell the listeners about who you are. And
Oh boy.
I know that's a big question,
That
but
was a
let's
big.
talk about you as a mom
Mhm.
and your family, a little bit about your family dynamics and what it was like for you in the early years as a mom.
Well, let's see. I had all three of my children in Las Vegas, Nevada, and that's a story in itself. But I spent the bulk of my adult years in Las Vegas, and that's where I met my husband at the time. And we raised for the most part all three kids in Las Vegas. At the time, I was in real estate sales, so I sold new homes during the whole boom of the whole real estate craziness, and then of course endured the real estate crash of 2008. But but yeah, I had three little ones and was married. Um, but that ended after 9 years, my marriage. Mainly because I mean we came from two different worlds, me and my ex-husband now. He was raised very strict in the Mormon faith, and I wasn't. So, right off the bat, being 23-ish, almost 24 when I got married, I didn't realize that that could pose such a big problem as grow old together and raise, children. Religion is a big thing. It's something that you really need to look at. And being young and in love and thinking, oh, it doesn't matter, and just, rushing into it. Yeah.
Well, and
So,
part of your story is you converted.
yes, I did. Exactly.
And how did that go for you? Like when you were young and in love and
You know, I mean, thankfully, his family was wonderful to me. That was like, second family, really, truly. So and I loved what that faith, the core values that they had. Family is always really important, that type of thing, service and service to others. So, it just, I was like, this is no big deal, which, again, great core values. But again, I wasn't raised like that. I was raised Catholic, so it was a big change for me. I changed really, truly a lot about my life, and um, just going to church every Sunday for 3 hours, and then they didn't drink coffee or alcohol, which again, not that big of a deal for me. It's not that I'm a big drinker, but again, it's changing my lifestyle drastically in hopes that I just thought, well, this is what he wanted. I wasn't forced by any means, but thinking that oh well, if I want to be with him and I want him to accept me and love me and do this, I gotta convert my religion, and so I did, and it was very different.
yeah. Well, and then being a mom is not an easy route for anybody. It's poses a lot of questions and uncertainties, and just being a mom in general it's a challenge. But then you had a very challenging kid as well. And so let's talk a little bit about, Cody being the oldest, and then you have two daughters
Mhm.
younger than Cody. And this book, Behind the Smile, talks about Cody a lot and his journey and your journey with him as a mom. And so, what were some of those things that you noticed early on as a parent that seemed maybe more difficult than what other parents were experiencing?
Yeah. So yeah, of course, not being able to compare it to anything, it was really just this like, intuitive feeling as a mom that like my baby just is not happy. And so, he really was very fussy. And, I'd bring it up to other family members or friends or doctors even, and they just kind of kept brushing it off. Oh, he's colicky, he's colicky. And I'm like, okay, but he wouldn't sleep hardly ever, like for long periods of time. It was, oh, maybe 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there. If I was lucky in the middle of the night, a couple hours. But he just really unhappy screaming, not just like, oh, he's a little fussy. No, he was screaming for hours. And then he would wake up very easily if there was the slightest sound, even something as simple as like um, flicking the light switch, a sound like that, in his bedroom or something. I mean, just little things, any little sound would wake him up and then he would scream. Very sensitive to his environment, hot, cold, loud noises. Taking him out to a busy store or restaurant, he would scream. So yeah, it was very, very challenging. And, here I am, I'm thinking, is it me? Am I not doing a good job or am I doing something wrong? And I see all my other friends or family members with little babies, and their babies were just seemed to be really happy and sleeping through the night. And the parents didn't seem stressed at all. And I was a basket case because I'm just like, why is my baby not happy? You know?
Yeah. And it's so hard because as a mom, right, we think there's something that we're doing wrong. And it's, I think, a judgment that other parents place on us, as moms, the kid that's screaming in the grocery store or in the restaurant or whatever, the first thought is like, can that parent not get a hold of their kid? Like, what's
Mhm.
wrong with that kid? And we don't ever really think that maybe there is something different about the kid and it's not the parent and it's not even the kid's fault. It's
No.
like we're all wired differently. And so how did you navigate that in seeing that maybe that was the truth is that Cody was just wired differently?
Yeah. Well, I definitely, I kept kind of doing my own research, kept, bringing it up to different, physicians and then family. And for a while, I was definitely dismissed, like, no, there's nothing wrong with him, kind of that sort of thing. But again, I just kept researching. I stumbled across, you know, uh, at the time it was called Asperger's.
Mhm.
And I was like, this, like, I had all the symptoms. And so I just, it resonated with me. So I'm like, this is it, and so it made me feel a little bit better just knowing, okay, what is this, and I'm not going crazy. And, but during that time, because it was back in the, early 2000s, there just was really no resources or help if somebody did get that diagnosis. So again, I was just kind of left with, okay, now I know what this is, but what do I do about it? Absolutely nothing. So it was just another frustration, when he was younger and, taking him to daycares or even just like to people's houses for him to play with other kids. It was really tough because he did not, number one, he didn't play like a normal child of his age would play. He didn't really like toys. And then if he got overstimulated, um, he would lash out in some way. So either hit another kid or bite another kid or scream or whatever. So just, even just getting him to be a normal kid that gets to go play was not easy.
Mm. So now, you're talking about, here you are married, you've converted your religion, you've got Cody, who's got a lot of challenging issues. You've got two other daughters who have now come onto the scene, and it's year 9. in your marriage and things just don't look like it's working. And so you are in marriage therapy.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that and what was that like for you? And how did that change what was going on in your life?
Well, we initially did go to marriage therapy knowing that, I mean, I definitely was, by the end of it, I was, from the stress and just being in a relationship where I had given up my identity, really, truly, I was very, very depressed. And so I kind of voiced those concerns. And having a child like Cody, definitely, our relationship was definitely put on the back burner. We never had time for each other. So yes, we went to marriage therapy, and then like a couple sessions in, she said, "I want to only talk to you by yourself, Diana." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's odd, but okay, whatever." And she just straight out said, "Do you even want to be in this marriage?" And I immediately said no. And it was really scary because I've never really truly said that to anybody like that. I was sure about I was sure, like, no, it was a solid no. And so, she basically was like, "Then what are you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know." It was just really scary because, I mean,
Yeah.
you have three kids, you've built, he owned his own business. We have this big, beautiful house. We're both, financially successful. And I mean, that just scared me. But I just knew that it was time for me to go. So that same day that she asked me, "Do you want to be in this marriage?" She's like, when are you gonna, what are you waiting for, basically, is what she said. And I'm like, I don't honestly know what I'm waiting for. So yeah, that's when I made the decision to go home and tell him I was leaving, and it was
Mm.
very scary, because I wasn't that type of person. I mean, I was definitely a people pleaser, a definite, it was all about, him and my children. I never really thought about what do I want, what do I need to make me happy. So that was the first step in pretty much saying yes to myself and my happiness. And it was scary.
Yeah, so scary. I mean, making changes at any age can be scary, but when you've got 3 young kids and you're dissolving a marriage and you've gotta support yourself and you've got a challenging child on top of it, it would have been easier to probably just deny your truth and keep
Yeah.
plodding ahead. Easier in some ways,
Yeah.
not easier
Yeah.
in the long run. But
Right.
sometimes, and I say that with a lot of compassion for those who are listening right now who may be in a position where you have some difficult decisions to make, or that the timing of something has ended and you just can't let go. And sometimes leaping off of that cliff and not knowing is better when you find out that there's a net, the proverbial net, right?
Yeah.
Than staying. And so now here you are, single mom, 3 kids, and, as we kind of fast forward through a little bit of this, talk a little bit about your journey with Cody, because the subtitle of your book is The Heartbreaking Journey of Raising a Son with Addiction and Mental Illness, and at the very top of the back cover, it says, "I was not able to save my son." And to me, that's just such a heartbreaker right from the get-go. But the the story and how it unfolds with you and how you had to grow as a woman and as a parent and understanding your role and your responsibility and his role and his responsibility as he got older is challenging. And so, how did you sort of navigate some of those times as he was growing and you were growing too simultaneously?
Right. Well, I think one thing that helped me along the way, I always say, I think it was like divine intervention, but I went back to school after getting divorced and got a couple degrees in psychology. So, a bachelor's in psychology, a master's in psychology. And, not realizing how my life was going to go. I mean, the knowledge that I gained from those degrees and working in the mental health field definitely helped me at least understand him as he got older, because he did, later he got diagnosed. He was on the autism spectrum, and then got diagnosed bipolar disorder, and then battled addiction. So I think it helped me um, kind of understand and know what to expect, and also just know the resources that were out there, because I was working in the mental health field. But I always say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink water. So, I had all the tools in my belt, truthfully, of being able to help him, seek treatment, go to the hospital if need be. I knew how to like set those boundaries and, whatever. But again, he didn't ever see, you know, that he had a problem. Truthfully, he really, truly did not accept that he had a problem, which is common. And although he did get hospitalized a couple times, once he got out, he never followed through with any medications or therapy or anything that I tried to help him with. So yeah, it was rough. And then near the end, I finally had to say, emotionally, and mentally, I had to say, I can't control him, anymore, and I kind of had to let go, which was really hard because as a mother, your instincts are just protect, keep them safe, make sure they have everything they need, help them and guide them. And I just finally had to let him go, which was really, really hard.
Yeah. So hard. Um, I'm just feeling the weight of that right now as a parent. And for those parents who are listening who feel like they should be able to control their child, and from a very young age, you knew you couldn't control him
Yeah.
and you knew that there was something different. And there are limitations as human beings that we have over one another.
Hmm.
And for you to have, I'll say, gifted yourself with the education, maybe unknowingly at the time,
Yeah.
but to get that education and to understand that there wasn't some sort of magic wand that you could wave that you hadn't tried, or, hey, if you just tried this, then couldn't you could just solve that problem really easily,
Yeah.
right? Because I think as
Exactly.
mothers, we feel like we should be able to
Yeah.
help our kids solve any problem and be successful. And, you said you have the tools. So it's not like you were, I hate to say like a deadbeat mom who was checked out and didn't pay attention to their kid or didn't care. It's like you were knowledgeable, you were loving, you were right there, you wanted to help, but you realized your own limitations.
Hmm.
And that must have been really hard.
Yes, it was very hard because you know when I finally, he was had just turned 18, and he was still, using substances, not getting the help he needed. So I had to kick him out of living with me. And he basically was homeless, living in his car. And, he was, the stipulation was you can come back and live with me, of course, but no drugs, no alcohol. We'll seek treatment. We'll go, stay on your medications or whatever. And he just was adamant, nope, I won't be doing that. I'm going to continue using and whatever. So, kicking him out of my house, even though, I mean, it's not that I had control over him even when he was living with me, but, that kind of, again, motherly instinct was I'm kicking him out to basically go, slowly kill himself. And
Mm.
so it was very, very hard.
And it's interesting to hear you say what for a normal mind, and I'm using normal in quotes, right?
Hmm.
Because as parents, we like to think that we have reasonable rules or boundaries. So to say, you can absolutely live here, just no drugs, no alcohol, take some medication and get help is
Yeah.
all reasonable. It seems
Right.
like that seems pretty like a pretty reasonable bar
Right.
to have, but the fact that you saw that he didn't want that and that he chose to not sort of do the reasonable thing, which again, I'm saying, to a reasonable, normally wired mind
Right.
seems obvious, but is it's something that I think that for your own sake, you had to have your own, we all have our own limits, right? Like
Right. Right.
you're working, you have 2 other children, you've got responsibilities, and, it's kind of like, "I'll do this for you if you do that for me." Like, that's how healthy relationships work. It's not one person giving, 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 bending over backwards, and the other person just walking all over them. It just said relationships like that don't work, not
Right.
marriage or friends or parent-child or whatever. So,
Mhm.
so when you came to us for, this book, do you wanna talk about that? Like, how did you know? So to kind of, uh, not to brush over the final, part of Cody's story, because this book is not just about the tragedy. Cody is also very well celebrated in the book too.
Yeah.
And so how did you know that it was time to put your story to paper? And what was that like for you when you first reached out? Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, I definitely remember. Well, it was interesting. It wasn't, I mean, to back up a little bit, I had never thought about writing a book, never wanted to write a book, never have, nothing. Um, but right after he did pass away, it just literally just came to me. And I always just say it was Cody sending me a message from the other side. Um, you need to write a book. And so I even verbalized it to my family. And, a few months later, after getting back from, you know, um, taking care of all of the planning for his death and everything, I just literally started writing. And I I kind of look at it as almost like a journal, like going back over his whole life and just journaling because I really didn't have a plan. Nobody told me how to do it. It was very interesting, but I still feel like it was just him giving me what I needed to do. So once it was done being written, again, never done this before, so I had no clue how to go about it. I just started Googling stuff like, how do you publish a book and what do you do? And so I came across traditional publishing and that route, but kind of came to the realization, okay, I'm not famous. I don't have a big following. I have really nothing to offer a big traditional publisher as far as, how, I don't know how to do it. So that was kind of daunting. And then my coworker told me about you and your team being, pretty local to this area. And so again, went online, looked up everything about you and booked a meeting. And and then it just your team and you especially, first off, just I felt like that your kind of goal and values aligned with mine in the sense that you do nonfiction and kind of, you know, um, this, personal stories and helping other people and touching other lives and all that. So I knew my story was, you know, a heartbreaking one, but one that I really felt that was going to help other people that are either going through something similar or have a loved one that struggled with any type of mental illness or addiction. So I just wanted somebody that appreciated that story, and that was definitely you guys. So after our initial meeting, I submitted to you guys the manuscript review, and which was very insightful because it's, again, it's my story, but I've never written. So I'm just like, I really was eager to hear what you had to say, good, bad, and, whatever, because first of all, I knew, I'm like, well, never done this before. So I'm definitely not um, thinking that this is like something fabulous. I know it needed work, but the bulk of the story was there. So yeah, it was very interesting, just the process that everything I've learned, about the whole hybrid publishing and that just was the route that just resonated with me and how I wanted to go about sharing his story.
Well, we loved you from the beginning. We just could see your smile and your energy. We could feel Cody and, what you and he were trying to do with the book. And we have published other authors who've also had difficult journeys, but that see the bigger picture. And we knew that you could see the bigger picture, that
Mhm.
it wasn't just a sad story that you had to just get out there, but it was a story that, with the perspective that you have to offer, could offer other parents hope. And I
Mhm.
think it's done that. And, I just want to read, or would you like to read the back cover copy? Because when, we do the manuscript review, that's something that we do with aspiring authors who might not quite know, like, do they wanna work with us or do they not? And so not everybody who comes to us has a manuscript fully written. Some people only have an idea and we kind of help them map it out, but others like you have done a lot of writing. And so it's always so fun and interesting for us to read what you have and then to offer feedback and to kind of see where could this fit in the marketplace, and what other books are comparable to it, and what are the Amazon categories it can compete in, and all of that. And one of my favorite things is really writing the back cover copy and how it ends up coming out. So um, I just think it's so on point. And if you want to read it, I would love for everyone
Sure.
to hear it.
Yes, okay. I was not able to save my son. Even though I work in the mental health field and have multiple degrees in clinical psychology, I was not able to save my son, even though I applied my knowledge and experience to try and help him. As the old saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. My son did not want help. In his mind, he was fine. It was the rest of the world that was wrong. Part of me now believes this too. He lived his life on his terms and was authentically and unapologetically himself. He was different and beautiful and loving and kind and mean and scary. He was all these things, but he was my beautiful boy. A life gone too soon. My heart and soul will forever be missing a part of it. This is the story of mothering a child tormented by mental illness, a child who medicated himself into psychosis in his search for the meaning of life. This is the story of a mother's love, grief, and awareness, a story that many parents share. To all the parents whose child has struggled with mental illness or addiction, I see you, I hear you, I love you.
How does it feel to read that?
And you want me to read the portion from
Yeah.
Okay. Diana is exactly who you would hope to work with as a patient or family member navigating this process. Her compassion and empathy for those in her presence are admirable, and she is an advocate for hope and healing regardless of the situation. From Amber Hent, CEO of Park Royal Hospital, where I'm employed.
So this book is really, it's meant as a a guidebook for parents who are loving and struggling with a child that has mental illness and addiction, which are both diseases, we know.
Mhm.
It's not a moral failing or anything like that. And I think that that's a really important distinction to make here, because as a parent, if we don't understand that the disease of bipolar disorder or substance use disorder is actually a disease just like cancer or leukemia, those things that we would offer compassion to others for normally, right? Because we
Mhm.
understand that is like not as I don't know, there's still work to be done
Right.
for more compassionate understanding, I would say, for
Yeah.
those who suffer.
Yes.
Um, so for you to be able to put all this into a book, and then for us to, let me just talk a little bit about the design here, because I love that we talk about celebrating Cody as well. And I think
Mhm.
that was a beautiful addition to the book. And I would love for you to talk about that too.
Yes. That's like one of my favorite things. And I'm getting a lot of feedback from a lot of people saying the same thing. So in between each chapter, because it is a heavy story and there's a lot of, it was a heartbreaking story, but Cody was so complex and he just like what I just read, he's brilliant and kind and loving, but he also had a side. He was angry at times and can be scary, but um, in between the chapters to kind of break it up and celebrate him, I had friends, family members, prior teachers from his school write memories about him that they had with him, and I inserted those in there. And we called it Celebrating Cody. So it kind of just breaks it up and it helps, because most of this is my perception as his mother, but getting others, experiences with him and memories and stuff, it definitely was really really neat to hear from other people that loved him and how many lives he did touch. And that was probably the most surprising thing from all of this. He was definitely different. So as a mom, I of course was protective and always felt like he was so different. And at times he did get bullied, but upon his passing, we had a candlelight vigil, and about 40 people came. I mean, on a whim too, from different states. They literally drove down,
Mm.
and I just heard so many stories of how he touched their lives and his big smile, and how he was a great dancer and he loved music, and just you don't realize how many lives you're touching by just being you.
Mm.
Touched a lot of lives.
And I love that you just mentioned his smile because we included this gorgeous picture of him the very beginning of the book. And you can see it's on page 3. So it's very, very front and center. And he is handsome and he's got a huge smile.
Yeah.
And to talk about, behind the smile and what people struggle with behind their smile is to me such a poignant message because we all know how to put on the smile, pretend things are fine, and we can believe other people's smiles mean they're fine,
Hmm.
but that's not always true.
It's definitely not true. And, I think as a society, that's how we're all kind of conditioned to not, just to put on this facade and this mask and pretend that everything's fine when it's not. And that's part of my goal of, sharing his story and my story is we hear this all the time. It's okay to not be okay. And I mean, it's kind of cliche and played out, but it's true. And, just because somebody's smiling does, you have no idea what's going on, behind the
Mhm.
smile. So that's why I chose that title.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing us to be part of this beautiful journey from you. Your willingness to share the story and to go through the editorial process and the design process. And we didn't even get into all of that today, but I feel like your story and what you shared is going to resonate with so many. And I will say that when we had the chance to launch the book on January 19th, which was chosen specifically because that was Cody's birthday and he would have been 25, right?
Yes.
So, and the book did pretty well during the launch. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. Um, as far as that it was a bestseller, that
Yeah,
was
yeah. You
crazy.
achieved a number one new release
Yes, that was
in a couple different categories, I think,
yeah.
didn't you?
Parenting boys. Um, I can't remember all of the genres or categories, but I know one of them was uh, I think mental illness and psychology or popular psychology, I think it was
Mm,
called. But yeah, lots of good stuff, which is amazing to me. I actually just heard from somebody that lives in the UK that I'm friends with on Instagram, and he read it. I've never met him in person. He read it and he said, I can relate to your son. I've gone
mm,
through a lot that he's gone through. So that's my goal is really to touch lives, change the perception of mental illness and addiction, break the stigma. Let's all talk about it. Let's not all fake it and put on a smile. So, yeah, it's so cool that it was a bestseller and all that, but I love to hear the individual stories from people
I
who have
agree.
touched. So,
I agree. And the Zoom book launch that we did for Diana, I'm not sure there was a dry eye in the room. Her 2 daughters were on, both were just I mean, when I can't remember, was it Jesse who said Jess, right?
yeah, just,
"If I'm just 1% like you, mom, I would be happy." And I
yeah,
thought, "Oh my god, for a mom to hear that."
yeah,
And then your dad.
yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, my dad, he's a computer programmer, doesn't show a lot of emotion, doesn't say much ever. When he does, it's very impactful. So the few words that he said, yes, that started all of us on our crying. But yeah, it's great to see the support and the love, and 'cause this has been a very, very challenging journey. But
Yeah. Well, you've been exceptional as an author and as a woman and as a mom. You have so many people who love you. You're touching lives even across the pond in the UK, and I'm sure there's more to come from that. For those
Mm.
who are listening who maybe suffer with mental illness or parent someone who suffers with mental illness or addiction or is in close contact, even if it's a coworker, a friend, a neighbor, this book is an absolute must read. It will help you understand better and have more compassion for those who are suffering. The book is called Behind the Smile: The Heartbreaking Journey of Raising a Son with Addiction and Mental Illness. Diana Ward is the author. We'll put the link in the show notes. And I want to thank you so much for being a part of our O'Leary Publishing family and for showing up today in such a powerful way and sharing your story so vulnerably.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing my story to life. I appreciate it. You guys are amazing.
Stay tuned for a final message here on the I'm Booked podcast.